at the point where I can remember plant names, but people's names I have trouble with. And sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night trying to think of what the hell's the name. I think of a plant name and I'm going, what does that look like? And I'm absolutely manic about trying to find a picture. I'm trying to put back in my brain what I should know that plant's name is or what I know that plant should look like with that name.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a curse
Yeah.
because you get to where you got to know. It's not like you got to forget 10 minutes from now. You get up to look at the book and you go, what am I looking for?
Yeah.
But I'm driven that way. I've got, God, I love my books. I did a little educational thing about books online on TikTok today, just showing my bookcase with Exotica and Tropica and MHCA and the Palm books. And, I prefer books over reading stuff online. And I really cherish the books I read. I'm reading an introduction now to a book about the gardens of Burle Marx. And the first page, I was in tears reading it. The introduction, it was like I was in tears, basically saying, if you go back to biblical times in the garden, man was at peace with nature and didn't try to overtake it. There was a harmony between nature and man in the Garden of Eden. And since then, man has become greedy and want to take over everything. And that's the reason we don't have the connection with nature that we should. But it talks about how important plants are to connect people with nature. Yeah. Just being connected to a single plant puts you in, I see kids that game all day long that have lives that I would never want. If I had kids, I wouldn't want them having this type of mentality or that type of a loss of contact between one kid to the other. You go outside of school when high school gets out, and everybody in that street, or no matter what they're doing, they got a phone at their ear or looking at their phone. Everybody. I mean, it's like you don't walk around and you'd be a geek if you didn't have a phone to look at like everybody else does.
Yeah.
It's become something like that. It's changed. The world I grew up in was before all that stuff. And I mean, it wasn't perfect, but we did feel like we were part of a fair democracy kind of country. We never felt like we were, going out there supporting people killing other people. But the history of the world is, people have taken over other countries, and war is a horrible thing, and genocide is still going on in places like Africa and Asia and Mideast. It's horrible that we haven't, gotten to the point where we say no more guns, no more, live a peaceful life or go someplace else.
Yeah.
And we're so far from the Garden of Eden where everything was in harmony.
Yeah.
But this 2 pages of this introduction to a book, I just got this book that I've been wanting for years from a friend that was selling them to make some money to pay rent. So I got a stack of books.
What is the Burle Marx book called?
It's on the table. We'll go in and see it. I'll let you read this page, but you see what I mean. First of all, I feel like I've always felt a connection, like I could be a David Fairchild or I could be a Burle Marx. I'm not, making landscapes for whole cities or countries with that level, but I feel they're both kindred spirits to me in a way that I have that same lust for green things that they must have had, because otherwise they wouldn't have been so involved in it. And a lot of people I know that start with plants, they end up getting into reptiles or insects, or it's a connection with nature.
Yeah.
It's the best thing that ever happened to people. To me, it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Me too.
You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't for this, I don't know what I would be doing. I kind of hated my job, but I stuck it out for 35 years because I wanted to pay for all this stuff. And, I was successful, but, I had to bite my tongue a lot when, I had to hide who I really was to stay in a position that was important to somebody else enough to pay me to do it. But I wouldn't want to be a worker at this time, because it's almost like slavery. If you work all day long and you still can't afford to live, you might as well be a slave because it's the same thing. You're a slave to your job, or you're, you know, whatever it is, it is.
What are a couple of the coolest things that you've done with plants and have created, in your opinion, not other people's?
Things that I've created from plants itself. Probably just finding a dead coca leaf and just hanging it up for years and enjoying it, even though it's just a dead leaf that showed up. I could show you why it's so special to me. I'll be back in just a second with it, and you can see what's so special about it. But it's one leaf I see it every day coming and going. And it was found on the ground under a dead tree, under a tree that it fell off of. This is the coca leaf, related to the sea grape, actually. It comes from Puerto Rico. It's hard like cardboard, has fantastic venation, hangs on a little hook on the wall without anything added to it.
Wow.
And stays like that indefinitely. It does not deteriorate any more than that. It's like wood now.
Yeah.
And these were laying on the ground at the Campong, which was David Fairchild's home. So it comes all the way from a plant that David Fairchild himself planted.
Wow.
So that's one special last leaf to me, because you don't see that every day. And I even had some plants of this that got too big for me, and I had to sell them and find new homes for them because I couldn't keep it protected. It was getting too big for the greenhouse. There's a massive relative of sea grape.
Wow.
It's a sea grape relative.
That's huge.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little dusty, but look at
the
texture of it. Yeah.
It's crazy.
For a dead leaf, it's like wood. I mean, that's pretty special as far as a single leaf. Not that other leaves are unique. Like, first of all, I've always told people that every single leaf is a window into a whole different world that we don't know. We might understand the physicalness of the plant, what it's made of, what the elements are. We don't know shit about the psychology of how plants live, how they communicate, how they manage to survive centuries of climate change, of the whole planet was covered with water. Now we've got deserts that used to be covered with oceans. So it's phenomenal how plants have evolved. Something that we have common native here in Florida, I have a native in Puerto Rico, not that far away, that makes leaves like that. And there's several plants in this family that make these massive leaves. And there's other giant leaves that I couldn't even bring in the house, like gunnera. Some of the ferns have 20-foot long fronds.
Yeah.
Some of the palms have 60, 70-foot long fronds. It's absolutely phenomenal when you see these really gigantic creatures, beings, essences, whatever they are, in nature, and you see something so phenomenal. Even if you go here in Tampa, you go to the park, and you see a gigantic cypress tree, it's awe-inspiring. It's so big you've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
They try to preserve those trees for people to experience, like the redwoods in California.
Yes.
And some of the tallest trees on this coast are the sweet gum trees, not sweet gums, tulip trees in probably near where you live. They've got these trees, these forests of these fantastically large special trees. So that's the answer to that question. A single leaf, other than other leaves that I use, medically or edibly or whatever.
Do you think small form Monstera is a different species than the large form?
I wouldn't say it's a different species. I would say it's a variant of the same species, just like all the deliciosas that are variegated are basically variegated deliciosas, different forms. So you get sports. They're actually chimeras. The chimera is like a freak or an oddity, a change in genetic composition, a change in appearance. So they give it that name. We call it a variegated one, but it's actually chimeras. So, and it's a naturally occurring it occurs in regular plants on a regular basis, and usually the plants that are vastly different don't survive because they're not in tune with the rest of the crowd. They don't flower at the right time when their pollinators come by. So nature's constantly changing stuff, but in the long run, it's the strongest ones of that species that's going to survive because they're more adapted. So there's, you could probably grow in a laboratory a lot of weak plants that never got to be like special.
Mm-hmm.
And the same place, you might have one that exceeds everything else in its growth rate and beauty. And that's how breeders usually pick out the most fast-growing, healthiest-looking plant to be the one to propagate, because if you plant like certain flowering trees, the first ones to come up are not the ones that flower the best. It's the last batch to come up for some reason. That the slowest ones are the ones that make more flowers than the ones that come up first. So there's some, not a clock, but some rhythm in nature that whether it's the light or the moonlight at night or the shortness of the day, like the light sensitive plants like that need fall to flower, or plants that have other conditions that make them flower that we can't even tell. Why do the Morphophallus around here come up in May, and if you dig them up and put them in the refrigerator and plant them the next year in December, it'll wait till May to come up. And if you keep it 2 years and you plant it, it'll wait till May to come up. If you plant the seeds, they wait till May to come up. How do they know it's May?
Yeah.
When they're in the ground as a seed or a tuber, how do they know at that point they've adapted to the temperatures, the moisture, all that thing gives them signals to say, okay, this is the time to put up your shoot. This is the time to make your flowers. So, we're just novices. A great book to read is called Planta, Planta, Sapiens, like Homo sapiens. There's a book called Planta Sapiens. I got it at a library here in Tampa. It was fascinating. It talks about the way plants communicate with each other and how we're at the infancy of understanding the true life of plants because we can't relate to it. We can't relate to something that doesn't have a nervous system like ours. Every blade of grass has an electrical charge making that thing grow. Every bit of life is part of this wonderful combination of elements that make us what we are, and the fact that we can actually have a brain to see, perceive, talk about, research, remember, and forget, all that rolled into one person. And you can't tell me animals don't think, and animals don't worry about things or freak out if they're left alone or lightning freaks them out. Don't tell me that they don't have a soul, because only man could have a soul. That's a Christian thing that was brought on by people that had no connection to nature. Going back to Adam and Eve's time, everything was in harmony. Mm-hmm. So, they deviated from it and became greedy about, the world would be a better place if it was all like the Garden of Eden. And we'll never go back. It's never going to go back. It's just a fairy tale about how it all began, with a good message that, if we hadn't got that didn't eat the apple, the forbidden apple, we would be completely different now. But, the proof is now that they find these skulls buried all over the world with elongated craniums. And apparently they've had DNA to determine that there's a Homo sapiens and another Homo species, that's a cross between the two.
Oh, wow.
So these first things that are way older than they ever thought life, 67,000 years old. We thought it had only been 30,000 years that man has been on Earth. They find man-like fossil evidence showing that there was life at least 65 to 70,000 years ago. Human life.
Wow.
Human life, even though it didn't look like us or act like us, but there was a man of that age in that period of time.
That's insane.
So if you think about it, most every famous place around the world that's connected to the solstices, like Machu Picchu and places like in Indonesia, there's a place that's very special. In Peru, of course, Machu Picchu. But all these places that are built align with the solstice. So in that first day of spring, the sunlight comes right through to the very next wall, 100 meters away, lights it up perfectly. And it's like they built this based on what they knew about the planets and stuff. And it was way more knowledge than we could have today with our mentality. They had figured out stuff that, way preceded our smartest people seeing it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there weren't people like Da Vinci that, were ahead of their time, but the general public was pretty dumb and slow in learning about the planet and taking care of the planet. And I mean, you go back to certain, even in the Bible, they talk about if you grow crops in the ground, you have to let the ground rest for a year. Let it, and a lot of places still do that aren't pushing as much as they can out of the ground. Now the ground is depleted in nutrients, and it's also full of poisons, toxins, because they've used sludge from the sewage to grow vegetables. They put that out in fields all over the country, and they plant potatoes in them, they plant carrots in them. That sludge has got toxic shit in it. We're just now understanding that, hey, why are more people getting cancer? Why are more kids obese? Why is all this going on? It's out of control.
Ourselves.
It's out of control. We are on it's an age of extinction, honestly. Each pollinator that passes away, that dies, that gets wiped out, everything under it, that plant that it pollinated dies, things that eat that plant that pollinated made dies. It's a whole chain reaction. So if one thing dies that feeds something else, then the thing that feeds on it dies as well. And it's going to be more of a vicious cycle than we see now. It's gradually now. We're already finding some places like the polar bears don't have a place to hang out if all that ice keeps melting. What are they going to do? They're going to be extinct because loss of habitat. Most of the plants we miss is because they've bulldozed or developed the land that they live in. They burned down parts of the Amazon this year, and the Amazon's never been on fire. And you can't put it out, and it doesn't come back. So you have parts of the Pantanal, which is the part that gets flooded seasonally, that all the trees and stuff are gone, and now it's just going to be, still flood with the season, but all the life that depended on everything there is shit out of luck, basically.
No.
It's sad, but you can't dwell on this. You can't be in a depression over the fact that the world's, got some serious problems. And I'm just glad I don't have children or grandchildren growing up in a deteriorating world where people are becoming less kind. Just meeting people like you and other people that have similar interests, I feel like there's a lot of kindred spirits that get us.
Yeah.
Like I get you, you get me, and other people that are like us. And that's more my world is the people that get me and the people. I mean, I have a couple good friends that I could hang out with. There's people that I haven't seen in 50 years that I would pick right up where I left off if they could come back in my life, if they were here still. But, I don't give up on people. But, people do come in and out of your life. It's the way it is. We used to think the friends we made would be friends forever, but the truth is friends come and go. And if you have one good friend, you got a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. People have a few good friends are very lucky people. And, if I didn't have my neighbors across the street, I'd be dead now because I fell down so bad a year ago in February in the woods on a bike ride that I wouldn't have been able to make it out of the woods alive. I was fell on my face, both eyes were bleeding, my face was cracked, it was a mess. And they wanted to take me out of the woods in a helicopter. And I said, I'm not going out of the woods in a helicopter. I don't care if it takes all day. I'm going to walk out of here the way I walked in. And it took about 2 hours to walk a mile because I would lay down, rest, get back up, walk a little while, lay back down. I had a thing on my side of my head like that. Both eyes were bleeding here and here. Both of them cut above them, beneath the eye. Luckily, just the frame went into my eyes because I fell right on concrete, thud. Just went down hard. I couldn't even put my hands up. But I was trying to avoid hitting a 2-year-old in front of me. So it was either I'd do that or I maybe hurt a kid. And so I just knocked myself over without even a plan. I didn't plan how to fall. My head hit the concrete like this, and I thought I was dead. I honestly thought, that's it, Poppy, you just died. That's exactly what went through my head. You just fucking died. And I lay there. Luckily, my neighbor's wife kind of took care of me, even though I was laying there just in the dirt. And I remember it was in February. It was real cold, and I had too much clothes on. I was feeling really hot. I'm trying to take my clothes off. I couldn't even stand up, and I'm trying to pull my shirt off and my jacket off, carry it on, and then everybody's saying, let's call out an ambulance. I'm going, I ain't going to the doctor. Fuck you. You know, I was adamant that and they were like, you're crazy, Barry. You might die from this. You know, you could have a brain bleed or a concussion. Yeah. I don't care. I'm going home. If I need to go to the emergency room later, I'll go, but I'm going home. And man, it was rough. I've got pictures of the way I looked at it. It makes me sick to see it. I bounced back, but I tell you what, I haven't been on a bike in a year.
I was about to ask if you had gotten back on a bike.
No, and I don't really want to. I'm at the point where I want to sell my 3 bikes because maybe I'm getting too old. Well, I don't feel confident to ride, you know. I could probably ride if I had to, but I was doing it for pleasure. Yeah, it was an accident, but it's the kind of thing that makes you want to, it's like, you know, when you do something stupid, you don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
So my chiropractor said, Barry, if I heard you're riding your bike without a helmet, I'll come and shoot you in your head myself. You're going to kill yourself. Her husband almost died. She was telling me the story about her husband and how he fell on his bike and he's still hurt and this and that. I go, okay, what are you going to do? The first interview I did with an Italian filmmaker that came out here and did a real interview with me was from Plant Story. And he said, this won't be aired for a year. They were working on all these different people's story. And basically the premise of that was, how did plants change your life? That was what this story was all about. So they were going to all different people and seeing how did you get into plants and how did it change your life? And it was almost 100% positive stories, you know, that you would see because so many people, so many dysfunctional people function great with plants. They may not get along with other people, but you go to most nurseries and you'll find people that maybe don't want to talk to you, but if you ask a question about a plant, they come to life. Yeah. You know, they're not business people. They're not trying to sell you something. They just care about what they're doing, and if they work there, they probably know a little bit more than you do. You know, so they're free with the knowledge. But people are different everywhere. Sometimes you go to a plant thing where like an orchid show, and there's people that are very pompous. They know their orchids are the best, and they're the king of that, you know, genera, whatever. I see orchid people that are so proud of what they do. I can relate to why they're so proud. You know what I'm saying? Because they got beautiful things that they've bred. They made these great crosses or whatever. And they're proud to show it. Just like if I show my art, I'm proud to show something I do. If somebody finds it, agrees with them, they could like it. If somebody hates it, I don't care. I didn't do it for that guy. I did it for me because I liked it. Yeah. You know, that's what it comes down to. But it's all good. Next question.
Next question. What plant is your arch nemesis?
I mean, the worst plant here in Florida, I don't have sand spurs, but if they were here, I would hate them because they're horrible little things. My worst plant is Biden, Bidens. It's a little white flower that sticks to your pants when it makes seeds, and it comes up everywhere. There's some Bidens that have been bred into nice little ornamental, stubby little plants with lots of flowers. The ones here, the native ones here, are a very common weed. Almost every place you go, there's Bidens. Little white flowers with a little yellow in the center, but they have these sticky things that stick to your socks and stick to your pants and stick to your hairs on your leg or whatever, and they come up everywhere. And they're hard to get rid of. If you have one come up here, it's going to make 50 more nearby, and that 50 more is going to make 50 more each. So you can now have thousands of Bidens. My friends in Homestead that had a nursery years ago, his biggest worry was that somebody would bring Biden's seeds on his property. He's trying to keep his whole property free of this awful weed. So Biden's is the bad weed here in Florida. Sandspur's worse, but we don't have them here. But places that have them, that's like stepping on tacks. They go in your skin, they go through your sandals. They're nasty. But that's nothing compared to other countries and what they have.
That's true. Most underrated plants.
Most underrated plants. Probably here in Florida is the cast iron plant, aspidistras. They're wonderful plants with a whole range of colors and textures and sizes. You rarely see them other than regular form. Sometimes you'll see the spotted form. I forget what they call it, but it's one with dots on it. It's taken over under my palms out here. There's two of them. The variegated ones were very beautiful. They were trying to sell some of that at the plant con for crazy money. I go, that's aspidistra. I got plenty of that shit at home. Yeah. You know what I mean? But to them, it was something beautifully variegated. And Plant Delights Nursery has come up with a whole ton. They're all from China, the aspidistras. There's a whole ton of beautiful ones, new ones that come out. One of them that just gets white on the tip of the leaves. One of them that gets lots of beautiful variegated ones. So plant collectors all over the country can grow aspidistra because it's one of the toughest. Cast iron plant means it doesn't die. You can grow it in a dark room on the top of a piano in a bar and it would live for years. Oh, wow. That's the nature of it. And they're all around the property here. I've got them here. But it's underrated and underused here. It's a great landscape plant for shade. I got some in bright light. The flowers are so unique, like a 10-inch diameter octopus. Ooh. 11 petals. It's only supposed to have 8. You make 11 petals on these here. In 2 weeks, they'll be flowering. I can take pictures of it. Okay. But it has the most geometric discs in the center of it, and the pollinators have to squeeze between a space about as thick as a paper to get in there to get the pollen from the corners to the stigma. It's really remarkable to dissect the flower.
What pollinates them?
It's got to be like something, a small soil-borne insect, because the flowers are beneath the soil generally. Wow. They flower beneath the mulch, between the layer of leaves and stuff. It's like this little hidden thing comes up, and there's something that crawls in there that probably gets through that little opening. It's a very tight spot for anything to pollinate. It's almost, you wonder how something gets through there, because when you dissect the flower, this disc is firmly planted over this little gap that can, now it may raise up a bit and let them in when it's time, but I've cut many flowers open to show people, because you could almost make a cast of it and make a beautiful medallion, because it's a disc with all these features on it. It's amazing.
I'd love to see that.
I'll send you a picture in about 2 weeks. I probably have a picture on my phone, but trying to dig it out is another story.
Finish this sentence. Dear plant collectors, please
be kind to each other.
And finish this sentence. Dear plant collectors, it's okay to
kill a plant every now and then. Everybody does it.
I agree. You can only take 3 gardening tools with you. What are they?
A pony shovel, which is a shovel with a solid steel handle that does not break or bend. It goes through anything. Okay. I have a stick with a hook on it that was a potato rake that all the other tines broke off, and I use that to pull everything around rather than pick it up. Third item.
The pony shovel, the potato rake.
Your favorite tool?
Yeah.
The wagon.
Well, the wagon is a handy, but we're talking about like garden tools. I have something called a grape hoe that they use in Georgia. That's wider than a regular hoe, and it cuts through roots real easily at an angle. So I can remove a whole lawn with this tool easily, where other people would struggle trying to dig it up. It would just take chunks out with the force of a heavy metal thing falling in the ground. So I would say either that or a Maddox, or Maddox is a grubbing hoe. Both of them have a sharp blade that's heavy that can be hit into the soil, and it would penetrate down 6 inches or a foot, and then you could, pull up the soil when you're going to plant something, and you want to get rid of roots from something. They're both out there, and I use them all the time. Very handy.
I'm gonna have to
rely
look
on
them up.
them.
Maybe order me some.
But I have like people go in my shed and they can't believe it. I have 29 different shovels.
Wow.
I probably have 39 now because I keep buying everything I see. I got edgers. I got probably 12 different edgers.
Wow.
And they're all on the ceiling of my shed. So it's just, it's crazy. Most of them
Any
never get
kind you
used.
need.
Some of them are for special digging of one thing only, like for laying pipes in your yard to lay pipes. There's one shovel. Some shovels just have a blade here and a long metal part to the blade is going way down below the soil, but without having to pick everything up. But there's a lot of cool garden tools. I could write a book on tools.
I see that.
I collected them so long that people think I'm nuts to have 29 shovels.
Maybe next time that's what we need to go through with your tools.
That's a mess.
Who has the coolest private collection and why? Or private garden and why?
Private garden. Probably Enid would, NSC, Botanicals, whatever it calls her company. She's been doing it the longest and has maybe the biggest collection of rare plants in Florida. I'm sure there's botanical gardens all over the world that have more plants or more species or more cultivars, whatever. But I would say from the people I know in the plant business, of course, Silver Chrome has the biggest, number of plants and a big selection. But I think the private people with collections are exceed, and there's a lot of people that have fantastic collections, all over the state, all over the world, basically.
Yeah.
Some of the people that come to mind are Burley Marx with his work in Brazil.
That book.
Wow, that book's right behind you. Second one down. You got it.
The garden. I'm going to put it like this really quick
Yeah.
so I can look at it later.
No, you want to read the introduction. It's just 2 pages, but you will be affected by it. It has to affect you. See what I mean? How that's so poignant now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I don't know, written a while back.
This line, it looks almost like it's bolded, like really hit. We are living at a time in which the destruction of nature is so great that it has become a preoccupation of thoughtless and ambitious people. In our struggle against the destruction of a legacy, we need to understand that we live in a world where plants exist, not only for material reasons, but also because they depict birth, growth, and death, emphasizing the instability of nature.
It's touching, the whole introduction. That was the lady, I think it was the lady writing, no, I think that was Brody Marx who remarked that about the lady writing the book.
Yeah.
I think you want to read the whole book.
Yeah, I do want to read the whole book. I'm going to find it
The one under it, look at that book. No, the one on top of it now. That little book.
Monstera. The Cultivated Aeroids. M.R. Birdsey.
He was one of the early aeroid people. It just has a couple of plants that we're all very familiar with and a story about them.
How old is this book? It looks 1951.
Yeah.
Wow.
Almost 100 years old.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 75 years old, sorry.
There's some really cool plants in here.
Yeah, and all of them are the ones that we grow.
Yeah.
But that's...
I'm going to need to get that book too. When you were a postman, did you ever find new and or cool plants walking around?
I didn't walk around. I delivered out of a vehicle.
Okay.
But I drove by a lot of plants. I don't think I ever, unless somebody threw a plant or part of a plant away in the trash, I doubt I ever got plants while I was on my job delivering mail. I once picked up something that somebody was throwing out and it leaked all over somebody's mail. They complained that They thought I urinated on their mail, and it was whatever happened. I never did anything like that, but they were convinced that I was up to something bad or whatever. But I drove 1,000,000 miles without any incidents
Wow.
during my career. So, I mean, that was a big deal to not have an accident in 1,000,000 miles on the road.
Yeah.
But delivering mail, especially because people back into you and try to go around you, but I was lucky.
Yeah.
I was lucky. It was a good time. I was in a good neighborhood. I had, I watched people grow up over 35 years. You see the babies born, and you see them getting married and having babies of their own. And during the time you get to go deliver their mail.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was okay.
Yeah. I know how you feel about it, but that's an interesting way to think about it. You get to see people grow up.
Exactly. And then being the mailman in the old days, before the internet, you knew everything about every customer on your route because you'd given them their mail. If they were getting foreclosed or they were getting a notice, or they were sick. I mean, not that you meant to, but you just by the mail you saw every time you delivered it to them, you would know if they were ill, if they were healthy, if they were still working, if they were retired. It's kind of strange, but it worked that way, where you knew more about the people than they knew you knew about them. There was a certain confidentiality. Kind of the stuff you saw, you kept your mouth shut. You didn't talk about it.
I never thought of it that way, and that's insane to think. I don't even know my post person, but they know me.
Well, they know about you for what kind of mail you get, but if you face-to-facing with people, you're handing them in they're waiting and they're giving them a package, or you go up to the door and have to sign for something. You get to know them, and you get to know some people that are 80% of them are nice. Maybe 20% of them are arrogant or a little bit, pissed off about something else, and you just ring their bell of a bad day, Well, they have a dog they want to let go on you, or a cat. I've had complained more about a vicious cat than any dogs. I never got bit by a dog or a cat, but I did get knocked over by a Muscovy duck and got hurt.
A duck?
A duck flew into me like I was going to give it food, and I backed up and I tripped on a wall behind me and I hurt my back. And I spilled coffee down my whole front of my pants and everything. And I went in and told my boss I just had an accident out front with a duck. And so
I don't mean to laugh, but...
No, he said, I don't have anybody to run you around. I was wet with coffee all over, and so you have to run your route that way. Sorry. And I did run my route that day. I've never forgiven that Muscovy duck, though. Not that I eat a lot of ducks, so I'm paying back.
There you go.
I don't think they're Muscovies, though.
What plant would you gift to a coworker you hate?
Oh, my God. I don't want to be mean, but there's some plants that I wouldn't want to have in my house. I'd say a Cuban oregano would be the most offensively smelling plant I know. If somebody wanted one to eat that oregano, they're welcome to it, but I don't want one in my house. Cuban oregano, be kind.
Okay. What was the best plant trade you've ever done?
Oh, my.
You have a lot, I know.
I would have to really think for a long time to answer that question, but I would probably yesterday's trade with Cass Marion. I gave her a really amazing plant, surprised her that I let her have it, and it turned out to be one of Scott Cohen's special anthuriums. So, and I didn't want anything back.
Yeah.
It was a gift, so it's not necessarily a trade. But I do swap plants with people occasionally, and usually try to give them more than they give me in size or value. But it works out. Sometimes you get something that's priceless, and you're just blown away that somebody would share something that they coveted so much and took care of and babied and propagated for you, and bring you a chunk of it and say, look what I brought you. Yeah. I get a lot of plants. Honestly, when I find a plant that I'm really lusting after, I start dreaming about it. And after dreaming about plants, somebody brings me the plant I've been dreaming about almost all the time.
Wow.
I don't care what it is. It hasn't been, some of them never come true, but some of the plants I dream about come to me by way of some communication system I don't understand or I don't even know exists. Seriously, I've had more plants that I've lusted after that got as a gift. Like the Spiritus Sanctus, I couldn't buy one of them. I saw Harry Wu a couple of years ago. He says, Barry, you have a Spiritus Sanctus? I said, no, I can't afford that. He says, next time I come, I'll bring you one. He gave me one like the next time.
Aw.
That Monstera Bro Marx.
Mm-hmm.
Karen was here, said, you don't have one of those? I'll send you one. That's the one in there.
He's the
She
best.
sent me one. You know, it was a gift.
Mm-hmm.
We've been swapping stuff back and forth, but people that are into plants, it's not. I'm not in it for the money. It's nice to make some money from the plants if you have a lot and you're doing that intentionally, but it's not about money. Old days, the plant people I knew growing up would give you anything in their collection if you wanted it, and you'd give them anything in your collection you wanted it, because that's the way the friendship was. The plant friends turned out to be people that, you want a cutting of this? Sure, here's a cutting of it. I want a cutting of that? Sure. And it's always been very fair. Nobody felt them taken advantage of. Somebody gave away the whole collections because they wanted to. It's not that they had to or anything. So it's a different mentality before we put values, like this plant's worth $1, this plant's worth $100. And, you know, it's still a plant. I think it was better when plant people just shared their plants with each other, and money wasn't involved, and people just did their own thing to make a living, and plants were the hobby or the side gig of somebody that just, you know, likes to do it. It got out of control. Look how many people are selling on Palm Street now. It used to be a couple of people a week might be on a social media selling stuff live. Now it's constantly, you can pick from several different people at the same time. Who do you want to watch? You want to watch this one? You know, and the way its system is set up, where they got your money, they got your account, they got your address. You just say yes, and they got it. It's coming your way. You're getting billed.
Yeah.
You don't have to do any follow-up. You know, it's a little bit unfair to the sellers because they have to wait till it's delivered to get their money. But any seller that's selling a lot of plants can wait, you know, a week or two to get their money if they know it's coming for sure. And you know, it's just the way that business runs.